Preimplantation genetic testing, or PGT, is a procedure used to identify genetic abnormalities in embryos created with in vitro fertilization, or IVF. The goal of PGT is to allow your physician to select embryos predicted to be free of specific genetic conditions or chromosome abnormalities for transfer into the uterus. It should be noticed that this process can be costly. With frozen embryo transfer, the overall cost of IVF and PGT can range from $17,000 to $25,000. There are three major types of PGT: PGT-M, PGT-SR, and PGT-A. PGT-M, or preimplantation genetic testing for single gene diseases, can screen for specific inherited genetic disorders like cystic fibrosis, Alzheimer's, and adenosine deaminase deficiency. It works by examining specific genes and searching for a specific genetic defect that is known to run in your family or one that you're a carrier for. This procedure is about 5 steps, starting with a consultation, going into pre-PGD. Your physician can then go into doing IVF, PGT, and lastly, embryo transfer. It's important to keep in mind that there are certain risks. Risks include false positives and negatives, which means that abnormal embryos may test negative for disorders only to be placed in the uterus, and healthy embryos may test positive and end up being discarded. All embryos could come back with poor results. Testing could be completed months after IVF, and genetic testing of family members may be required, making this process quite long. PGT-A screens for missing, additional, and abnormal chromosomes within the DNA of a few cells that are removed from the embryos precedingly created with IVF. The procedure is only about 4 steps, starting with a consultation, then going straight into IVF, PGT, and embryo transfer. It will then tell if the embryo will be born with Down syndrome, Edwards syndrome, Patau syndrome, and many other syndromes. Risks for this option are the same as those of PGT-M. The last option is PGT-SR, also known as PGT for structural rearrangements. This test is for people with or who are carriers of a chromosomal rearrangement, inversion, reciprocal translocation, or Robertsonian translocation. This process works by looking at the chromosome structure of embryos and determining if they have enough chromosomal material. It's only about 4 steps, just like PGT-A. Really, the only risk is that none of the embryos will have enough chromosomal material, making them less likely to result in a live birth. All of these options are stressful and take some time, but the advantage is there is a high chance you will come out of everything with a healthy baby. It's important to keep a clear and positive mind. Also, not to worry, if there are extra embryos, they can be preserved with cold for another cycle if needed.